Thanks for listening to The Inside Story with me, Tim Story, the CEO of the National Conference of State Legislatures. On this episode, I get to talk with Clint Hurdle. Clint spent decades in Major League Baseball as a player and as a manager. He's upfront about both his wins and his losses. At the beginning of his rookie year with the Kansas City Royals, Sports Illustrated put him on the cover and labeled him baseball's newest phenom. He went on to play for the Cincinnati Reds, St. Louis Cardinals, and the New York Mets, yet never quite lived up to the hype of that rookie year, despite playing in and losing the World Series. When his playing days were done, he went on to a successful career as a major league manager, taking the Pittsburgh Pirates all the way to the World Series. Yet again, he didn't win the coveted championship ring. He learned many lessons from his ups and downs in professional baseball, and he's become an inspiration to fans across the globe by sharing his personal stories about those days, about overcoming adversity and staying focused on what truly matters in life. We're going to hear some of those lessons today and why they matter for people who work in and around state legislatures. Clint Hurdle, what a delight. How excited am I to talk to you? I love it when I get a chance to talk to somebody who's built a career in a very different world than the world we inhabit. And frankly, a world that I don't think everyone quite understands, the world of professional sports, the world of professional baseball. You learned a few things about being a manager, about being a person, and about taking care of people, relating to people, and building teams. And that's what we'd like to talk about today. So, hey, thank you. I mean, really, really thank you for being with us.
No, you're welcome. I've been looking forward to this opportunity ever since I spoke at the summit in the beginning of August. Hopefully I was able to bring something to the table that they all can relate to, because truthfully, at the end of the day, we both are we're building relationships, we're taking care of people, we're trying to head into the future with a vision and a direction that works, that works for everybody.
That's awesome, and that's what I really want to talk about. Let's just a little bit about your road to now. What brings you to this place? Quick recap: you were one of these rare people who, obviously, a gifted athlete, and had the choice of, do I go play baseball or do I go play football? Why'd you pick baseball over football?
Well, I think there was more just want to in baseball. Football practice, I never had a warm fuzzy for football practice. I love Friday night. And I loved a lot of other things about football, the community, the camaraderie. I was a quarterback, so I was in charge of delegating and being a go-to guy on that side of the ball for 10 other men. But practice was practice. Baseball, I never felt like I had to go to practice. It didn't matter if there were coaches there or not. There were so many times my buddies and I would just get together and get out the balls and bats and do our own thing. A lot of our summers were filled with that, getting on bicycles, driving down the ball field and just playing together. So there was a difference. There's people in Merritt Island, Florida, where I grew up, Merritt High School. To this day, they'll tell you I was a better football player than I was a baseball player. But baseball made my heart beat. Practice was never too long. Practice was never too hard. It was something that I embraced year-round. So it wasn't a hard decision. The more complicated decision for me, graduating from high school, was not to turn down the athletic scholarship at Miami for football and baseball, but it was to pass on the opportunity to go to Harvard on an academic scholarship. And the cool thing about Harvard that got my attention, I mean, like a slap in the face, all the other colleges I went to for football or for baseball told me, well, if you have trouble in school, we'll get you a tutor, we'll work things out, we'll make it happen, but we got to keep you practicing and we want you ready for games. Okay. When I went to Harvard and talked to the people there, counselor there said, look, if you have trouble with your schoolwork, you don't go to practice. You don't even have to go to the game. Harvard is an academic institution, and we are focusing on your grades and you getting a degree and you walking out of here and leaving a mark or creating a mark. That dynamic of, okay, if you have trouble with school, we'll fix that and you can play. If you have trouble with school, no, you're going to go to more school and you're going to figure out how to do school right. But at the end of the day, it was baseball. It had always been my dream since I was 5 years old.
Yeah, nobody can argue with that. I thinking about how you said something that I think directly applies to people who serve in legislatures. You kind of, I think, implied this notion that the passion for baseball was just natural. You didn't have to trick yourself into going to practice or drag yourself into practice. You just wanted to be there. And I was thinking about, this legislature world. Maybe that's telling you something when you're like, oh man, I really don't want to go to the Capitol next week or maybe even today, that maybe that's when you need to rethink, like, is this the sport I want to be in right now? When you look back at it, you sum it all up. How do you reflect on your time on the field as a player, not as a manager? What was your biggest takeaway? Like, what do you reflect on when you think your playing days?
In my playing days, it was a quick shoot through the minor league system. I was drafted in the summer of '75. I played just a little over 2 years of minor league ball and made my major league debut at the age of 20. Doesn't happen very often anymore. From that point on, it was hard. It's obviously the highest level. However, things got more complicated along the way for me, I think, personally and professionally. The game had different challenges at that level. There were distractions outside the game. I was always loved coaching, and I listened to a lot of people. And I think I tried to make everybody happy along the way, which I can promise you that's probably the quickest way to make a lot of people unhappy. I switched a position when I got to the big leagues. I never had a position switch in the minor leagues. And a couple weeks before we were going to break in spring training, we made a trade. And the manager said, hey, can you play first base? And, when you're a 20-year-old kid, yeah, of course I can. I'd never played first base in my life. That was a challenge to play at the highest level in a position you never played at. So it wasn't linear by any means. There was no linear trajectory. And you know that in life. We learn that in life. You learn that in legislature. You learn that in politics. There's highs, there's lows. How do you find balance? How do you find boundaries? How do you eliminate distractions? Those are all things that I had to figure out along the way to the best of my ability. Some of them I did well with, some of them I didn't do so well with. And it seemed like in the blink of an eye, a 10-year major league career was over. From the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1978 to retiring at the age of 30, that's probably not the way a lot of people thought it would go. But by the time I got to be 30, I had spent a lot of time in the big leagues. I was more or less not playing every day. I was part-time playing, which still was good. But the last few years I went to spring training, I had to make a team. And I did. But it just got to the point at that particular time in my life that I went, it just seemed like a time for a pivot change, something different. And I'd learned so many valuable life experiences as well as professional experience. I thought maybe coaching is something that I could find some purpose in. Maybe my shared experiences could help young men develop, because I was a can't-miss phenom that kind of did. But I played in a World Series. I played on division championships. I'd been traded. I'd been released. I'd experienced, you can check off a lot of the boxes on things that can happen to you during a career. I'd been hurt, been on the disabled list, had some crazy cool ups. There's nothing better than playing in the World Series and having your mom and dad there and having some friends support you there. However, that just seemed to have a shelf life for me. And rather than continue to chase that dream, knowing I was going to be on the outside looking in, I thought, where could I go? What could I do to maybe start learning again and start at a bottom level and work my way up, hopefully. But I never said I wanted to grow up and be a big league manager. I just wanted to get into coaching to see if I could help young players maybe not have some of the challenges that I did. It took me in a completely different direction, and it took me under a ride that has lasted over 30-some years. I was probably much better suited to be a coach than a player when all was said and done.
So this is really fascinating to me. Like that the playing experience is, ups and downs and all that. And you're like, oh, I'd rather be a coach. Did you know you wanted to be a coach while you were playing, or was it more like, what am I going to do after playing days are over? Was it just something that burned in you to like, I want to help other people? Like, what do you think was motivating you to go that direction?
Well, I did not plan on being a coach when I started playing. I think most players are tied up in themselves so much that they want to play well. And I had aspirations, as a lot of kids, from the time I was 6 in the backyard playing wiffle ball to be in the Hall of Fame. And towards the end of my career, when I stopped playing every day and became more of a platoon player, I should say a bench player. when I started with the Mets and I spent time with the Cardinals, I basically was a backup catcher, the backup first baseman, the backup third baseman, the backup right fielder, and the backup left fielder. Which in today's game, it's a very valuable position. They call it a super U, a super utility player. Back then, you just called it you were on the bench and you just backed up a bunch of guys. We didn't have a real cool term for it. But it was during those times of not playing, of actually watching other people play, of working in the bullpen, working for pitchers. The last position I picked up was being a catcher. And then learning that part of the game late in my career to develop those relationships, to see how the part of the pitching played, it really dominates most of the game. Then the last couple of years in a bullpen situation when I wasn't warming up pitchers, watching the game from that angle and then getting to watch the game from behind the plate, it kind of brought me into some new frontier, new territory. I thought, wow, maybe not just coaching in the minor leagues, but maybe if an opportunity to manage in the minor leagues, that might be kind of cool. So it probably developed at the back end of my playing career.
So then you transitioned to – what was your first managing job? Where'd you pick that up?
It was kind of funny because I got my first managing job by threatening to continue to play. It was in Port St. Lucie, Florida.
So you became a manager because they're like, we'd rather you stop playing and become a manager? Who was that with?
Actually, it was with the Mets. I was playing in the minor leagues, and I was going to go to spring training for the third year in a row and have to make the club, because I did in back-to-back years. I did it with the Mets, I did it with the Cardinals, and I was going to go back to the Mets, made the club again. I should say 3 years in a row. I walked in as an extra guy, a non-roster player, and made the Major League club. But it was that winter that one of my superiors, our farm director, Steve Schreiber, said, hey, have you ever thought about managing? And I said, Steve, it's kind of funny you'd mention that because lately I have given a little thought. And he goes, well, I'm just here to tell you that I think it's something that you have a chance at being good at. We have a position in our rookie league in Glens Falls, New York, and we'd love to have you manage that team. And I said, well, wow, I'm humbled. That's interesting. I said, but you're also opening up a facility in the Florida State League 45 minutes from my house. I lived in Palm City, Florida. And I said, that place is only 45 minutes away. He goes, well, you can't manage there. He said, you're not ready for that. That's high A ball. There's 3 levels you got to work at to get to that level. I went, oh, okay, interesting. Okay, good to know. No thanks on Glen Falls. I'm going to go back. I'll play. He said, so you're going to go just try out. I go, yep. Unless that thing in Port St. Lucie opens up, that's the only job that I'd retire for. So I get a call a week later. Hey, are you thinking this through? Are you good? Listen, I can bump you above Glens Falls. I can take you to Lynchburg, high A. I go, wow, or high rookie. Wow, that's nice. Thanks for thinking of me. But did you fill the position in St. Lucie? No, we haven't. Well, that's the one I'm holding out for. No, I'm just going to focus on playing and get ready for spring training. And then he said some other things that weren't quite as nice to me on the phone. I wait another week. I get another call. And he says, hey, are you telling me that if you could manage that St. Lucie club? I said, yeah, for the last 3 weeks, almost a month now, that's what I've been telling you, I would retire for that opportunity. And he said, okay, I'm going to call your bluff. That's your opportunity. We'll hire you as the manager there. I said, well, I don't even have to retire, Steve, because good players retire. I'm just going to stop playing before people stop calling. So I took the position. I got the job in the Florida State League by continuing to threaten to play.
So now you're a manager / coach, and you make it all the way to you manage 2 teams in the World Series in Major League Baseball at the Major League level.
Well, I managed 1 team in the World Series. I coached a team in the World Series, and I played in the World Series. So I managed with the Mets organization for 6 years, 2 years at A-ball, 2 years at AA, then 2 years at AAA. Then I was fired, and I joined the Rockies organization and spent 5 years, completely different job. I became a hitting coordinator. I would just travel from affiliate to affiliate and work with the hitters, and I would stay in contact with the hitting coaches, build the hitting program, make sure the hitters were in alignment. I did that for 5 years in Colorado as a minor league hitting coordinator. 1 year I also was the field coordinator, where I ran the entire minor league options on-field stuff, and then was gifted my first opportunity to be a coach at the major league level in 1997. I did 11 years of minor league service to get back to the big leagues as a major league coach, and then I spent 5 years as a hitting coach before I became a major league manager with the Rockies. in 2002. As you mentioned, I have been to the World Series 3 times, once as a player, once as a coach, and once as a manager. And that's a very small group of men that have done it that way. But you know what a smaller group is? I finished second all 3 times. So every team I went to, we lost the World Series. That's even a smaller group. But there is, after you lose years later, because it stinks for a while. But now I look at those relationships that were built. I look at those journeys that were taken. The time was spent, the energy that was involved. Truthfully, there was some blood along the way, but there's a lot of sweat and a lot of tears along the way. That to get that opportunity, it is worth it. And more outside of that, it's worth it for so many other people in the organization as well. All the employees. How about the people around the ballpark that are trying to sell things, whether it's hotels, restaurants, street vendors? But to see the employees in the organization 3 different times get on that ride with us, experience that joy, that special time of playing baseball, playoff baseball. That's something I will never forget.
I wonder if there's anything that is sort of an analog for that, playing at the highest level or performing at the highest level, whether it's, your first chair of the Boston Symphony or whatever the greatest symphony in the world is, or you're the greatest card player in the World Series of Poker or fishing tournament, whatever it is. I'm trying to think of the analog for people who are, going to work in state capitals and that kind of thing. I mean, do you ever think about that? Like, how do you relate that to people who are doing a wide variety of things, including making laws and policies and helping constituents?
Well, I think it's a great question. And basically it goes back to why are you in it? Are you in it to win the World Series trophy, or are you in it to help others become better, to make others' jobs easier, to bring joy in others' lives as well? I was fortunate that I was mentored by some people that, the best type of leadership is servant leadership. And that's what I believe the political landscape is supposed to look like. The legislative landscape is supposed to look like. People in those positions are there to make other people's lives better. Those leadership skills, they play everywhere. There's adversity, there's challenges, there's relationship building, there's learning, there's grit, there's perseverance, and there's joy. And, the old saying that you're never going to enjoy the view from the mountaintop until you spend some time in the valley. And it was very encouraging and energizing for me to be at that summit. And there was a bunch of people at that summit. They were focused on their place. They were focused on their group, who they were representing, their constituents, their voters, where they lived, all those things. And it was just energetic and of course, reaffirming for me to see people politically motivated that were working together, that smiled about their job, that looked forward to whatever challenges that might be coming because they were going to lock arms and work through them.
You talked about servant leadership. What does that mean to you? We hear that term often, but go kind of a level below. And how did you bring that to managing the Rockies and the Pirates and all your different roles?
Well, I was fortunate that I had some guys that mentored me along those lines. Servant leadership goes back to exactly what I said earlier. It's making somebody else's job easier. I am there to find a way to help put you in the best possible position for you to have success at your position. And one of the guys that hired me, Kelly McGregor, was a mentor of mine. He was the president of the Rockies at the time. He told me walking in the door that basically your job is to make my job easier. And my job as the president is to make your job easier as the manager. And if we can work together along those lines and get everybody working outside themselves for the greater good, we have a chance to do much more good than any one person can on his own. When we can lock arms, decide on vision, decide on policy, decide on the how-to in a room, lock arms, and then deploy and go out and actually do it and be intentional and be committed to the work, you can bring a lot of people with you. You can actually get a groundswell of people to go with you. But we've all worked for people that we may have felt they had another agenda. And, I used to share with my coaching staff as I was trying to manage coaches, don't ever become the oh no coach. And they would say, well, Clint, what do you mean by that? I said, well, can you remember a time when you were a player or an athlete, when you saw a coach walking in your direction, as soon as you saw them walking in your direction, you dropped your head and said, oh no, here comes Clint. We've all had those people in our lives. What you were looking for creating is an atmosphere and a culture in which I'm walking towards you, Tim, and you go, oh gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Every time Clint shows up, I feel better when he leaves. I mean, he's given me something. There's something. We have a conversation.
I think what you're implying is that the odds of success, increase when you take that approach. I also like this notion that you had with Kelly McGregor, who was the GM while you were at Colorado, right? This whole notion that my success is your success. And if we're both kind of thinking like, hey, I'll do what I can to make you successful, we do the same, you get everybody on that page. It's the same in legislatures. Let me ask you this. Because legislative leaders and as well as legislative staff, directors, managers, those kinds of folks, there's a lot of turnovers, maybe similarity, because every election brings a new 20, 25% group of people. You also have high turnover with staff. Did you learn over the years any kind of, what's the magic to getting people to really be their best version of themselves?
Oh, I think there comes a time it's just called evaluation of people, evaluation of your personnel. I know one thing for sure that I picked up on early. I needed to help them eliminate distractions. Distracted workers don't work clean. They don't work hard. They don't work efficient. So help them eliminate distractions. What's holding them up? Is there fear? Are they caught up in a title? Are they not happy with their financial remuneration? I would try and have some honest conversations about meeting them where they were and saying, okay, I can help you here. I can't help you there. Your play is going to escalate your salary. Now, based on play, you can get more opportunity, which can get you more dividends, which can get you more performance levels, and those things can help. However, what can we do to enhance your play? You're not playing that well right now. What do we need to do to get you to be the best player that you can be? At the end of the day, though, it came back for me still to build a relationship with a coach or a player. And I thought it started with earning their trust. And it was basically 3 questions I developed back when I was a kid in 8th grade trying to make a basketball team. I had asked the coach why I wasn't playing more. So already I'm trying to be the 8th grade coach. I told my dad about it, and he said, well, son, sounds like you're whining to the wrong guy. I'm not your coach. You need to go talk to your coach. So I went and talked to my coach, and I asked him why I wasn't playing more. And he said, well, the other players are better than you. And I said, well, okay. I realized here's our disagreement. I said, what don't I do well? And he gave me 4 or 5 specific things. And I went, okay. Obviously, he's evaluating my skill set a little differently than mine, but okay. I said, so if I could get better at those, I'll play more? He said, absolutely. I said, okay, can I trust you? And he looked at me like, well, what do you mean? And I go, I'm sorry, can I trust you to work with me to develop those skills, to earn more playing time? And he looked at me, he says, well, I've never had that question or presented that from an 8th grader before. And I said, well, if I want to play more, you're my coach. You're the one with the skills. You're the mentor. Who else is going to teach me? He said, no, we can develop a practice schedule where I can meet you on this day for an extra 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and we'll work on these 4 areas. I said, okay, great. So I said, we're going to earn each other's trust, right? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay. The other thing I learned is when you show people you care about them, they'll go the extra mile for you.
You're a thoughtful guy, who's really, cares about trying to lift other people up, share what you've learned and bring them around, which is why I know about this email thing you do. This that I guess started as a text and just sort of things you share that you think will lift people up. Why do you do that? Why do you still continue to do that? What makes that important to you?
Well, there's been times in my life, in my career, that it was very lonely. And I felt isolated. And I wasn't sure who was there for me. Had I isolated myself or alienated myself? Somebody always seemed to show up and give me an arm, a lifting. I used to call them arm lifters, hope brokers, encouragers. I'm sure they were there when I wasn't doing well, but I just didn't pay attention to them. So what I've tried to do over the years is be an encourager, to be somebody that will listen, sometimes listening is the best tool. I don't have an answer. I don't have a fix. I don't have a solution. I can listen and say, wow, I felt that way. Here's what worked for me. Here's what didn't work for me. But it started with a text message. I had 12 people on it. I did it for 2 months when Kelly and I were both in the Rockies. Then I got fired. And it was 2 months later at my first vacation in 35 years. And I got a call. It was from one of the people in the leadership group. And she said, hey, how are you doing? And I said, well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm on family vacation. It's July 4th weekend. She goes, well, I just want to let you know the team's doing great since you got fired. And they did. They had a remarkable run. Jim Tracy came in and took over, and the team got the playoffs. But she goes, but we're missing something. We're missing you, your leadership, your voice, your love. She goes, we would have these sessions, and then you would draw up the notes, and you would send them to us. And at the bottom, you would write, make a difference today. Love, Clint. She goes, well, you're not making a difference anymore, and I don't think you love me. And she hung up the phone. And I walked back in the room. My wife goes, what happened to you? And I go, well, I just got this very sobering phone call. And I shared it with her. She goes, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I'm going to take a walk. So I took a walk around the block. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start that thing up. Even though my swipe card doesn't work, even though there's no job down there, there's people that maybe I can still impact and help along the way. So the text list was 12 people. It went in the hundreds. I finally got smart enough where I flipped it to email. It's grown and grown and grown. It's 7,000 people strong. There's a daily email of encouragement on leadership. And then there's a devotional also that I put out. And from people I read, people I lean into, people I learn from. And you can go to that site at ClintHurdle.com, and it's free. It goes out 6 days a week. And it's just to help. It's just to provide some support. And you'd be amazed at how many times, Tim, I'll get something back, go, boy, you can't believe how I needed this today. And I chuckle because every time I send one, I've already read it, and it's already squared me up. And I thought there may be somebody else out there that it could impact or influence or help. And there's not many days that go by that I don't get a handful of replies just thanking me for making their day better or giving them a different thought or some encouragement or an answer they didn't have. That's why I do it. That's why I'll continue to do it. I learn from reading, all the blogs or the readers or the books that I read and the shares I come up with. I continue to learn.
Well, thank you for doing that. I was thinking about the word legacy and how, when you play sports, you play at the highest level and maybe you get your name on the trophy or in the record books and your Wikipedia page, goes through all your titles and all your, positions you played. But maybe the real legacy is what you just talked about, lifting people up and continuing to do that. That's a pretty impressive legacy. And that's going to ripple, from time on. So that's pretty awesome. Good for you, man. I appreciate you doing that. And I'm going to go sign up. Hey, man, what a cool pleasure for me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving us your time and sharing some thoughts with our group and coming to our big summit.
Tim, you're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity to share. Much appreciated.
My guest today was Clint Hurdle, longtime Major League Baseball manager who still serves as a coach for the Colorado Rockies. You can sign up for Clint's daily inspirational emails at ClintHurdle.com.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. We encourage you to review and rate NCSL podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Pocket Casts, Stitcher, or Spotify. We also encourage you to check out our other podcasts, Our American States and the special series, Building Democracy.